The Stolen Gold by Belazir. Chapter 1. Suzanne Keyes opened her eyes that morning to the face of Lucy. "Time to get up, darling," she said softly to the slowly awaking girl. Suzanne groaned and buried her face in her pillow. The last thing she wanted to do was get up and prepare for school. "Suzanne, you must get up now," persuaded Lucy once more. "You're sure to be late if you don't get along." At a snail's pace, Suzanne sat up and slung her feet out of bed. All right, I'm up." Lucy smiled. "That's my girl. I will begin running your bath. While you are waiting, you may do anything you wish." Suzanne nodded, and Lucy went into the bathroom. Even though she loved Lucy, she wished she wouldn't have to wake her up so early. Suzanne walked over to her window bench, sat down, and gazed out her window, soaking in the sight of a beautiful Indian morning. Suzanne loved her bedroom, though it was bigger than she needed it to be. She had a queen-size bed complete with a heavy velvet comforter and satin sheets, a huge rich brown dresser with a mirror, a walk-in closet, 2 plush rugs, and a love seat complete with a side table. If that wasn't enough, she had her own bathroom too, but this was only because her parents were the King and Queen of India, and they were extremely wealthy. After taking her morning bubble bath, Suzanne dressed and strolled down the stairs to breakfast. Lucy came with her. Her brother, Frederick, and her parents, King Stan and Queen Rosella, were already downstairs sitting at the breakfast table. The cook, Jacqueline, was busily making breakfast. "Good morning, everyone," Suzanne greeted them politely. King Stan gave his daughter a hug and a smile. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" Suzanne nodded and helped herself to what Jacqueline had put out, spinach and tomato quiche and caramel rolls. But as soon as she sat down to eat, the sound of the golden knocker shook the castle. Thud, thud. Queen Rosella looked puzzled and took a sip of her tea. Who could that be at such an early time? Lucy looked confused too, but she went along and answered the door anyway. When she opened it, a man with an official-looking royal blue suit and shiny black loafers stood in front of her, along with the guards, Jonathan and Carlos. "Who is this man?" Lucy asked. Jonathan answered in a deep voice he would like to speak with the King and Queen, if that is possible. Lucy nodded and stepped aside to let them into the castle. Chapter 2. The King and Queen finished up their breakfast and went into the family room to converse with the unfamiliar man. He began to speak with King Stan. "Good morning, Your Majesty," uttered the male. "I am Sir William, and I have come to tell you I would like to purchase your marvelous castle. I have heard such great things about it, and—" King Stan held up a hand. "Hold your horses. Our castle is not for sale." Sir William nodded. "I know it is not, but it would give me such a lovely home for my family, and—" "It's already a lovely home for mine," interrupted King Stan, "and I have absolutely no idea why you would ever want to make such an outlandish purchase. No one's asked to buy our home before, have they, Rosella?" The Queen shook her head no. Sir William started back up again. "Just wait, I'll pay. What, 5 million? 10? Enough!" roared the King. "It sounds to me like you're a bad apple. You're onto something. Tell me the truth. Who sent you to make this inquiry?" Sir William gulped and wiped a drop of sweat off his brow. "Sir Salazar," he croaked. "Your brother. I'm one of his servants and best friend." This made King Stan turn a shade of red, then purple. Smoke was about to puff out of his ears. His face crumpled up into a sea of wrinkles. "Salazar?" the King managed to say. "Why does Salazar want anything to do with me? Can't he just leave me alone?" Sir William butted in. I don't know your history, Your Majesty, but I need to go along with my master's request. Please, please let me buy your castle." "For Salazar? I don't think so. Off with you," King Stan said furiously. "But, Majesty—" "No! Off with you!" Sir William clenched his fists and walked to the door furiously, with the guards at his back. "You will be sorry. Someday your brother will own this castle," he shouted as the guards led him out of the room. Chapter 3. 2 days ago, the Keyes' family stash of gold bars was completely full to the brim. Now it was all empty. King Stan called the India Police Department. Queen Rosella asked the guards if they'd seen anybody acting oddly, but they shook their heads no. When the police officers arrived at the castle, Lucy let them in, and King Stan started answering loads of questions. "Where were you 2 days ago?" demanded one. "Did you see anybody strange around the castle?" fired the other. "Can we take a look around?" barged in another. "Did they take anything else?" questioned another one. While their mother and father were busy, Suzanne and Frederick made themselves comfortable in the den and talked. "Who do you think it was?" Suzanne asked her brother. "That odd fellow who visited 2 days ago," Frederick replied. "What was his name?" "Sir Walter, wasn't it?" Suzanne shook her head. "No, silly. Sir William. And do you remember what he said when Mom and Dad refused? 'You will be sorry. Someday your brother will own this castle.'" Frederick nodded. "I'm almost positive it was him. But the only problem is, we don't have any proof." Suzanne sighed. "I know." The two children didn't know what to do, but they didn't have time to think any more because their dad's white face appeared in the doorway of the den. "Children," he said, "we need you. Come with me." Their father's voice sounded so urgent they couldn't resist helping him. So they leapt off their cushions and ran with him out the doorway, down, down, down the twisted staircase into the main room. Police officers were waiting for them patiently. "Children," said one of the police officers, "do you know anything about the gold bar incident?" Frederick stepped up. "We don't really know anything about it, but we have a good guess about who the thief might be." "And who is that?" asked the officer. Suzanne cleared her throat. "Sir William, you know, the one who tried to purchase Daddy's castle." King Stan nodded. "It could have been him. I've never seen a man act so strangely before. Plus, before he left, he shouted something about how I would be sorry that I let him leave without claim." At that moment, Macmillan came into the main room. He was Frederick's personal servant, like Lucy was to Suzanne. He had big brown eyes and flat dark brown hair that made him look striking but serious. "Can I do anything to help, Your Majesty?" King Stan shook his head. "No, Macmillan, but thank you." Macmillan nodded and left the room. The police officers continued to investigate, but it was that night when everything came together. Chapter 4. Suzanne woke with a cry. She was beginning to feel terrified from the most frightening dream. She thought about going to get Lucy from the servants' quarters, or even going to wake her parents, but didn't. Instead, she rolled over and concentrated on falling back to sleep. When Suzanne was finally drifting off, a creaking noise woke her up again. She bolted upright and listened as her heart pounded out of her chest. Creak! Went the strange noise again. It almost sounded like someone was walking down steps. But no, that was crazy. Who would be going downstairs at 2 o'clock in the morning? Now Suzanne was very anxious indeed. She slipped out of bed, carrying with her a flashlight and a blanket, and tiptoed into Frederick's room. "Frederick!" whispered Suzanne as she shook her brother awake. "Frederick!" Frederick sat up in alarm. When he saw who it was, he whispered, "Suzanne, what are you doing here?" "Frederick, I'm incredibly scared. I woke up from this freaky dream, and then I heard this odd creaking noise. Please come downstairs with me," begged Suzanne. Frederick got out of bed and slid his feet into his slippers. "All right, but let's go quickly." The two children silently made their way into the main room. Then they heard another noise. "Oh!" Suzanne about leapt into her brother's arm. "Well, now do you see what I'm talking about?" Suzanne whispered furiously. Frederick nodded, then said, "It's coming from downstairs. Turn on your flashlight." Suzanne flipped the tiny switch, and a narrow beam of bright light emerged from the flashlight. Even though she was more afraid than Frederick was, she said, "I'll go down first, since I have the light. You follow." The two children made their way into their lively basement. It looked far different at night than in the daytime. Then they heard that same noise again. "Oh!" Frederick listened closely. "It's coming from the wall panel," he stated quietly. At the back of the arcade, there was a secret panel on the wall that slid open to reveal a corridor if you said the right password. Nobody except for King Stan, Queen Rosella, Frederick, and Suzanne knew the password. So why would there be a noise coming from it? Frederick and Suzanne made their way over to the wall panel and began chanting the password. "Gold bars, rubies, goody good goods, kept stored in secret as expensive things should. Reveal the passageway, let us go in to observe all our family holds within." The door slid open, and the children trekked inside the claustrophobic maze. Frederick, who did not like to be in small spaces, said, "Suzanne, could we just take the tunnel railway?" Suzanne nodded. The door is right here. Come on. The tunnel railway was a car-like machine that traveled on a railing. No one else knew about it except for the Keys, and took it to look at all their riches instead of going through that awful maze. Suzanne boarded first, then Frederick. They strapped on their seatbelts, pressed the red button on the control panel, and off they went. After their brief zip through the darkness, they hopped off and put the brakes on the tunnel railway car. At the door, they started to hear humming, then singing. Ooh, I'm gonna be rich. Ooh, baby, I'm gonna be rich. From all this gold that I'll get to hold, I am gonna be rich. The children knew instantly who the voice belonged to. Suzanne tugged the handle on the door. Chapter 5. Macmillan! Screamed Suzanne as she burst through the door. Macmillan was so startled he jumped at least 3 feet in the air. Suzanne? Frederick? What are you doing up this late? Frederick shook his head. I believe the question is, what are you doing in our special stashes room? And why do you have all our rubies in your hands? Questioned Suzanne. Macmillan went from startled to angry. Because I feel pushed down. I was almost king of this castle until your father ran me over in the election. I almost had the riches and the fame. Suzanne gaped. What? You almost beat Daddy in the election? Macmillan scowled. Yes, I did. I was the only one running. I was sure I was going to be the next king of India after Daniel Vasquez died. But then your father barged in, and India elected him for his good looks and charm. Frederick frowned. That doesn't mean you can take all 1,000 of our gold bars and our jewels, piped up Suzanne. Macmillan scowled once more. You know, I've never much liked you children. You're snobby, pathetic, and impolite. If you tell anyone about this little meeting, I'll... The door of the special stashes room flew open, and in the doorway stood King Stan, Queen Rosella, Lucy, and 2 members of the India Police Department, all in their pajamas. Macmillan? King Stan shouted in disbelief. Suzanne? Frederick? What is going on? Macmillan wore the cheesiest look on his face. Majesty, he said, I walked down to check on your brilliant stashes, and these 2 tykes went after me. Shouldn't they be in bed? Suzanne started screaming. Don't listen to him. Dad, he stole your gold, and he has rubies hidden in his coat, protested Frederick. King Stan sighed. Macmillan, you aren't even supposed to know the password. Empty your pockets, please. But, Majesty, empty your pockets, please. When Macmillan finally gave in, out came rubies, gold necklaces, and more gold. The police handcuffed him and took him away, while King Stan and Queen Rosella thanked their children. After the long, confusing night was over, the Keys and Lucy took the tunnel railway back to the wall panel. They slept the rest of the night soundly and didn't have to worry about servant thieves anymore. The end.